right, we can hear you.
Hello. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay,
All right, guys, it's 4:01, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for showing up. My name is Brooke Blair, and I am the Teaching and Learning Specialist for the Tennessee Strong Families Grant at UT Swarps. And we have very special guest with us today, Dashawna. She's going to be speaking about evidence-based practice and programs, and she is with our UT College of Social Work. So we're going to let her get to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hi everyone. Again, my name is Dr. Dashawna J. Fusselware. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville College of Social Work, but I'm based on our Nashville campus. And ever since I started at UT, I've taught the treatment planning class, which is essentially evidence-based practice and the evidence-based process. So this is kind of my jam at UT. So I'm excited to be with you all today and presenting this information.
Dr. Fusselware, I think that you are on mute.
That is wild. Okay, all right, I will start over. All right. So again, hello. I thought I muted, but wait, it's fine. So again, hello. I'm Dr. Dashawna J. Fusselware, assistant professor at University of Tennessee, Knoxville College of Social Work, but I'm based on our Nashville campus. And I am in my second year at UTK, but the entire time I've been there, I've only taught our evidence-based practice class. So this is kind of my jam, and I'm excited to be here with all of you. So our agenda for today, we're going to start with talking about like what is evidence-based practice, and then move into why is it important. And then after that, we'll have a little discussion about how we use evidence-based programs. That'll kind of be the meatiest part of our conversation. And then how do we find them? And so I have a list of some sources that you all can use as you write your grants to find programs, and then that will be the most interactive part of our day because I'll be asking you guys, is there anything in particular you want to look for? And we're going to look for it together. I will be asking questions throughout for you all to respond to by unmuting or just writing in the chat. However, if you have any questions as we move through the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand, unmute, interrupt me, or place your question in the chat at any time. So here's that first question. What does the phrase evidence-based practice mean to you? So feel free to unmute and share, or you can write it in the chat. And I will say that I taught high school for 2 years before I became a social worker. So I am good at waiting for responses. Okay, good job, Riley. It means that the recommended solution is based in research. Awesome. Is there anyone else? Is the chat not available to participants?
I can't access the chat.
Okay. No biggie. Y'all can just put them in the Q&A. That works too. All right. I have EBP means a program or practice for which there's some evidence of effectiveness. Yes. And then, so I'm just going to mark that as answered. Cool. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to say or write what does evidence-based practice mean to them? All righty, we will move on. Oh, Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. The program has been studied and found to be effective. Awesome. So we all are kind of on the same page about like what evidence-based practice means. We're going to dive a little bit deeper by moving into some definitions just to make sure we're all on the same page. So on this slide, like I said, are some basic definitions. First, let's begin with this kind of concise definition of evidence-based practice. Evidence-based practice is using the very best available research to inform practice decisions, such as the choice of an intervention to use with individuals, families, communities, or systems. Next up, an evidence-based program is a program that has been rigorously tested in controlled settings, proven effective, and translated into practical models that are available to community-based organizations. I'm usually not this tongue-tied, I promise. I don't know what's going on today. And so, as you may be able to infer from the previous slide, the concept of evidence-based practice is more than just one thing. First, evidence-based practice is a belief that clients deserve to be treated with interventions that have been evaluated and shown to be effective. This belief should ultimately guide your work. Next, as discussed on the previous slide, EBP is a process where you find the best evidence to choose and implement an intervention with a person, family, community, or system. And lastly, evidence-based practice is the art of delivering evidence-based interventions and evaluating their success with your clients. So why is this important? There are several reasons why engaging in evidence-based practice is important, and I could just tell you all those reasons, but everyone on this call is doing work in our communities, and I assume is highly capable of telling me why they think this is important to your work. So feel free to unmute or type in the Q&A why this is important to your work, why evidence-based practice is important to your work.
I can't type nothing in the chat.
I think for us, I really like your point about that our clients and for us, the women we serve deserve the best. That if we're going to be recommending a solution that's going to be lasting and more than just a hunch of something we think is good, but something that's going to have long-term lasting effect on their life, and what we promise to them has a more likelihood of coming true.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to share?
And giving them a wraparound conclusion so that they will be able to withstand anything that comes back at them and being there to help them when they need it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annette. I really appreciate that desire to be like, hey, we want to be a constant presence in the community. And one way to do that is to make sure that we're delivering the best care. Awesome. Anyone else? So now let's launch into some of the reasons that you guys have already mentioned about why EBP is important. So first, EBPs positively impact the health of program participants. This is the most important reason, which is why it is first, is that we want to use evidence-based practice in order to make sure that our clients have the best chance at meeting their goals and meeting the treatment outcomes that we try to address. Other reasons that we may want to use evidence-based practice and that it's important that we use it is that funders are increasingly demanding that you use these practices in order to be funded, in order for them to support you in doing your work. They want to see evidence that you are using evidence-based practice. Next, agency leaders want to concentrate limited resources on proven programs. So things are tight, especially right now, and things are up in the air. And so there for some of you all, resources may be limited. And so you want to make sure that you are using the best available programs, so that we're not wasting time, we're not wasting brain power, we're not wasting money. Next, program managers are very busy. You all have a lot to do. There's a lot of needs to be met in the communities. And we want to make sure that you are able to focus on delivering your programs, on doing your interventions instead of having to develop them. And so it's easier to have a program that's already been created, already been vetted, already been deemed effective, and being able to just follow the instructions to implement it, then create one all on your own. Next, participants want to be doing something that is most likely going to be helpful for them. They want to make sure they're spending their time doing something that has been proven to work, something that has the best chance at helping them meet their goals, helping them meet their needs. And so evidence-based practices are one way to do that. And then lastly, the demonstrated outcomes of evidence-based practices are attracted to potential partners. And so if there are other organizations who want to help the populations that your organization serve, and they know that you are using programs that are evidence-based, have been proven to work and are working with the people that you serve, they might be more likely to refer clients over to your organization. Okay, so this three-circle figure that you see on the screen and that you may have seen on the flyer for this webinar is a representation of the EBP process model. It's called the transdisciplinary model of evidence-based practice, and it's meant to articulate the components of the model, as well as highlight the sources of information that must be considered to formulate practice decisions. So as you can see, this model has 3 circles, not just 1 circle. And so considering available resources, so I think you guys can see my mouth, yeah. So considering available resources, client characteristics, and the context in which you provide treatment is vital to making practice decisions. And in my opinion, again, just my opinion, I don't know everything, client characteristics should lead the way for me. Or at least they do in my work. So for example, my research primarily focuses on mental health literacy, and making sure that you are able to recognize the signs and symptoms of mental illness and have accurate knowledge about how to seek treatment. However, I'm also really interested in school and community-based interventions for trauma, depression, and anxiety. So there is a school-based trauma intervention that research has shown to be highly effective. Like, it is held really as a gold standard for school-based trauma interventions. However, not surprisingly to me, but maybe surprisingly to y'all, none of the research that backs it up includes a sample that is predominantly or exclusively Black. So that's something for me to be incredibly mindful of when deciding if I want to use that intervention with Black youth. So the research body overall backs it up, but what if it's not really culturally appropriate because it's never really been evaluated with Black youth before? I run the risk of causing more harm than good. And so that's just something I need to be aware of. Does that make sense? I can't see. So I'm gonna assume no one's saying it doesn't make sense. So okay. All right. So in addition to the model of, oh, hold on. I have a Q&A. Yes, it makes sense. Thank you, Riley. So in addition to the model of EBP decision-making, there are 6 specific steps of the EBP process. And so now we are going to really get into like how we use this. The first step is to convert information needs into an answerable question. During this step, some of the major things to accomplish are are assessing the client's problem or goals, selecting goals and objectives for treatment, and deciding how to measure client outcomes. Again, I want to emphasize the phrase client can refer to an individual, family, community, or system. To my knowledge, you all are potential grantees for the Tennessee Strong Families Grant. So I have a general assumption that you engage in work that serves the needs of mothers, children, and families. Would one or two people or more be willing to unmute and share what their organization does specifically to provide for this population?
We work with pregnant and solo parenting students to help them complete college. So we provide housing, childcare, and success coaching and connections to resources and relationships to help them thrive.
Oh, that was dope. Kara, what? Is it Kara or Cara?
Kara.
Kara, what organization do you work for?
We're called the Momentum Network.
Oh, wow. That's really awesome. I think that's really dope. Would anyone else be willing to share what their organization does to meet the needs of this population?
I'll share. We're Hope Clinic in Nashville, and we provide an initial healthcare home for women who finds herself in an unplanned pregnancy to confirm the pregnancy with an ultrasound and talk to a medical professional, and then get connected with an OBGYN in her region. And then if she is interested in parenting, we can support her with education classes, community, professional counseling, and material support through the course of her pregnancy and into her child's first year of life, and include the father of the baby as well. If he's in the picture, we want to make sure that he feels like he has a strong community to encourage him in his fatherhood journey.
Awesome, Riley. That's really great work. And it's good to hear. I was just at the American Public Health Association conference up until yesterday. So I didn't get back home until late last night. But I presented my work on mental health literacy, and just so happened to have the rest of the presenters do maternal child health work. And one of the audience members was like, "Where's the F in MHC, like maternal child health, like fatherhood?" And so it's really great to hear that your organization does include fathers in this work and as part of the support system. And also with everything going on, I'm sure that your work and the work of your, well, not sure, I know the work of your organization is really needed right now. Would anybody else like to share what their organization is doing? Okay. So it looks like from what I'm hearing, all of you may already have an idea of what your chosen intervention will address or target, which takes us to step 2. So step 2 focuses on searching the literature to find the best measures and interventions to assist you in meeting the goals of your client and the broader community that you serve. You can do this by reading systematic reviews or perusing clearinghouse intervention lists, like we'll be doing in a little bit. Step 3 involves critically evaluating the research evidence to assess how convincingly the authors of an intervention study make the case that the intervention is responsible for improvements in client outcomes, that like it actually works the way it's supposed to work. As practitioners and providers, we have to be able to determine the strengths and weaknesses of research studies when choosing measures and interventions. So this is why your research methods course is important, especially if you are a master level social worker. I know our social work students tend to dislike our research methods class, but it really is important, I promise, because being able to evaluate research is an integral part of evidence-based practice. To determine the impact of an intervention, effect sizes are usually the measuring stick, and essentially that just means, does the intervention produce a large enough change that makes an actual impact on the life of the client? So there is some math and science behind effect sizes that can be complicated, even as a doctoral level social worker for me. As such, I'm just not going to go into a ton of detail about it. But essentially, again, the question is the impact large enough to actually make an impact that the client feels like there has been a change for the better as a result of the work that you've done? And then lastly, we've talked about this a little bit, but again, it is super important that you make every effort to use interventions and measures that are appropriate for the clients that you serve. It's not just about racial identity. I personally wouldn't rush to use an intervention that was created for boys with a client that identifies as a girl or non-binary or gender fluid. You're usually not going to find a perfect fit for your client though. So I will just put that out there. There is going to be no magic intervention that checks all the boxes. We as individuals have like way too many characteristics for that. However, the point is that we have to do our due diligence to ensure we're not wasting valuable time, like we talked about earlier, by using something that is way off base and not appropriate. So step 4 requires you to bring together all 3 circles of the EBP process model to make a decision about which intervention you're going to use. I want to re-emphasize the importance of keeping your client included in the practice decision-making process. Client buy-in is so crucial to the success of our work. You could be implementing the best intervention ever for moms, but if they don't show up, that intervention is essentially a failure. Please, 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 please include your clients in the decision-making process by using easy to understand language and being open to feedback. I know you all are under a time crunch since grant applications are due on the 30th, but if there is any way to get feedback from those you serve about the intervention you're thinking about using and putting forth in your application, I encourage you to do so. Quick question. This is not planned, but I do have a question. Do any of the organizations represented on this call happen to have like a community advisory board or some type of advisory board where clients and communities that we serve have a voice in the decisions made by the organization?
The Momentum Network has a resident advisory council.
That is dope. And what are some of the things that they are tasked to do, Kara?
They are asked to do a survey after each meeting, and they are also encouraged at least once a semester to host their own meeting without staff and to come up with some ideas or solutions or feedback for the current policies and invite it into the planning for future semesters.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And have there been any, can you give me an example of any changes that have been implemented as a result of feedback from the residents?
Absolutely. We had a new participant who came on board and indicated that she was a little bit overwhelmed because she joined after some of the other mid-semester essentially. And so after receiving her survey, we talked with her one-on-one and then also partnered her up with another participant who was able to get her caught up offline, but not in a meeting. Another thing added on to her plate, but we just encouraged them to connect at the playground to get caught up to speed and also to follow up with us if she had any additional questions. And then we are now a little bit more proactive about how we help them to know that, you know, you're jumping in the middle, but we're here, we're inviting your feedback, and we will make changes and slow some things down to make sure that it's not a stressor, but something beneficial.
Awesome. That is awesome. Thanks so much, Kara. Like, it's not just about saying like, oh, we want your feedback. It's also about making sure that you are actually doing something with the feedback and showing community members and your stakeholders that their voice does matter and does influence the things that happen in an organization that may impact them. So thank you so much, Kara, for sharing my on the spot question. Okay. And then step 5 and 6 are related to implementing and evaluating the intervention that you choose. So assessing the success of an intervention for your client is more than just pre-test and post-test surveys. It is best practice to have ongoing progress monitoring to ensure that you and your clients are on track to meet their goals and objectives. Using the feedback from these formative evaluations to make tweaks to the intervention plan is how you do outcome management. I do encourage that you make these tweaks. A lot of people who engage in evidence-based practice encourage that you make the tweaks. However, you do want to balance that with ensuring intervention fidelity. So if you make a ton of changes to the intervention and things don't work, you can't say the intervention didn't work. You change the intervention, but you also don't want to stick to business as usual if things aren't working for your client. So you just want to, again, make sure you're balancing those things. Make note of all diversions from the treatment protocol. So, just jot it down to better identify what worked and what didn't work by engaging in intervention monitoring for you and evaluating intervention adherence for your client. So it's not just whether you make a bunch of changes, but is your client supposed to be doing something as part of the intervention that they're not doing? If they're not doing it, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. But again, you also want to make note of that as well, because again, you don't want to say, oh, the intervention didn't work if it wasn't followed essentially 100%. Again, ongoing progress monitoring is encouraged, but you do want to make sure that you complete a summative evaluation at the end of your intervention. So that's your post-test to determine if those you serve have experienced good outcomes. This summative evaluation also serves the purpose of whether your treatment processes worked or didn't work and can help you make adjustments to the intervention in the future, which leads us to the topic of lifelong learning. New interventions and updates to interventions are going to be made as time goes on. Like, that's just science. It is our professional obligation to continuously reflect on our practice and incorporate new knowledge as it comes to best meeting the needs of the communities that we serve. So we are about halfway through the hour, which is exactly where I want it to be. But are there any questions before we see this in practice, before we actually start looking for evidence-based practices and really getting you guys to jump in and tell me what you're thinking about as you put forward your grants? Are there any questions I can answer about EBP and the EBP process?
We have a question. What if, I guess, how do we respond if there's gaps? We feel like we're searching for an intervention that doesn't exist or doesn't address kind of more holistically what we're looking for. Like, as a faith-based organization, we're looking for innovations that would speak into someone's spiritual life as well. And it seems from our initial research that there is a lot of gaps in that area.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is making adaptations. And so if you find an intervention that meets your needs, but does not have that spiritual component, there's nothing wrong with saying that we are going to use an adapted form of such and such intervention, describe the intervention and say, for the purposes of, in alignment with our organization, we are going to add a spiritual component to this intervention. And I think that is appropriate because, yes, there are a lot of social problems that don't have like pretty succinct, already made interventions. Essentially what people do is hodgepodge different interventions together or add certain things, especially in the cultural adaptation space. And so I think that is is efficient to say, hey, like this is a intervention. And we're just going to add something to it in order to be in alignment with how we do things here. Okay. Are there any other questions I can answer before we move forward?
Dr. Fesselware, it looks like Chrissy has her hand raised. If you want to unmute Chrissy, you can go ahead.
Chrissy, if you're talking, I can't hear you. Oh, Chrissy, you're unmuted too. So yeah, if you're talking, I cannot hear you.
Maybe we can swing back around and catch her at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sure do. And again, you guys can feel free to interrupt me, especially now, because now we are going to move into how do I find evidence-based practices. So this is not an exhaustive list. I just put together some resources that I saw specifically about maternal child health. So again, I'm a mental health researcher. So maternal child health, family stuff, pregnancy stuff is not my my stilo. So it was fun to be able to look and see where there were some interventions. But definitely we are going to look at where to find stuff. And so the first link I want to click on is the Results First Clearinghouse database, because this is something that I actually use in my research, especially as I lean more and more into intervention work. Oh. Oh, there we go. Okay. All right. So this is the Results First Clearinghouse database. It is currently run by Penn State. It used to be run by Pew Charitable Trust, but they transferred authority over to Penn State a few years back. Well, oh yeah, in 2021. So this is the website, and essentially when you scroll down, oh, can you guys see this? Oh,
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, cool beans. All right. So you choose your category. So as I was looking for stuff for this workshop, I felt like child and family well-being was relevant. And then you all can tell me if I'm off base, but I thought that sexual behavior and teen pregnancy, maybe teen pregnancy, was also relevant. And then I know I have a lot of community-based orgs on the call. Do I have organizations that work in specialized settings like schools, hospitals, home-based stuff? Okay. And then the rating colors are important. So let's go down to the legend. So for the Results First Clearinghouse, anything that is highlight that has a green circle next to it is your highest rated. Your yellow circle is your second highest rated. And these are really the types of programs that you want to be putting forward are those that have green and yellow. Everything is not going to have a green. If it doesn't have a green, if it just has a yellow, that's fine. Everything's not always, just because it doesn't have a green button does not mean that it's not good. Blue is mixed effects. gray is no effects, a red dot is negative effects, and then that black triangle is insufficient evidence. And so because we've gone through the legend, and I said that you usually want to implement green and yellow interventions, we're going to select that. And so these are the interventions that are located, that are in the clearinghouse that address child and family well-being, sexual behavior, and teen pregnancy in the community, that have high levels of evidence to support them, or moderate levels of evidence to support them. And so the first, let me see how many came up with. So I think there are, is there just 5 pages? Uh-oh, that's not what I meant to do. Let's see. Okay. So they have at least 5 pages of, oh no, there's more. So there's at least 10 pages of interventions for you all to review and choose from. So I'm gonna go back to page 1 because there's one that I saw when I was reviewing yesterday that I thought was really well. So 1, 2, 3 magic, again, has a yellow circle next to it. So it's still fairly supported by the research. And so okay, so you should be able to click on learn more. And then it tells you who the target audience is. Its goal is to strengthen the parent-child relationship, teach positive discipline, give parenting techniques. Here's your evidence. Randomized control trials of the 1, 2, 3 magic program have demonstrated improvements in child and parenting behaviors. So that's good to know. They do have, it looks like there's a small sample size, so that's something to be mindful of. And it even says sustained effects need to be replicated in a larger, more representative sample. So that is something to be mindful of, is if that works for, if that will work for your population. And look, they're trying to provide me with technical assistance. I love that. Is there anything else? Delivery of the 1, 2, 3 magic program is flexible, but could generally consist of 1 to 4 sessions, which are about 3 hours each. So that's something to consider, is does your staff have the capacity to devote the time to delivering this measure? You would click here to find the cost. Does your organization have a budget, and what is their budget? Because some of these interventions may cost money to get the materials and things of that nature. Is there anything else? And then that is the website that would take you to 1, 2, 3 magic. And look, it's also available in Spanish. And so that is how you would use that database, which I think, again, is really helpful because it provides you a lot of information about the evidence that supports it. You have access to the website to learn more about the program itself. And it just is really, really helpful. It gives you, it's like a first shop, it's like a shop to find interventions. Okay, so the next, so let me go back into presenter view. All right. Okay, so the next resource I want to show you all is Healthy Start. And so they have funding from HRSA in order to do work towards families, moms, children. And so there was a evidence-based practice that they had here, Mothers and Babies. And it shows you that the evidence rating is one, it's been rigorously evaluated and shown to be effective by maternal child health experts. So this is something that would definitely be an intervention that you would want to use if you're talking about mood management for pregnant women and new moms. And so again, you would just click on the website. There is a cost. So again, thinking about whether or not there's the capacity or the funds to implement this intervention, and the website. And it shows you learn about how to get trained. So do you want to be trained to implement mothers and babies? And you would contact the organization and see how long that process will be, and if it's feasible for you all to get trained and implement the intervention and evaluate it within the grant period. Next up is our own Tennessee Strong Families website. There are some resources here. I was checking around the Mothers and Pregnant Women tab. So again, this is they have mothers and babies on there. So there are for each box there's a resource list. So if you wanted to go through it and look at this. And then last but not least is my favorite, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Organization, aka SAMHSA. They have a really robust directory of evidence-based programs and interventions. So here you have your evidence-based practices resource center, which I highly encourage everyone to peruse. But then they also specifically have an early childhood mental health program directory. And so here are some of the programs that they recommend or that SAMHSA is funding. And so the first is like Project Launch. And it is essentially focused on promoting early childhood mental health and making sure that moms and dads and other adult caregivers are in a position to promote the mental health of their young children, the young people that they monitor and watch and love. Okay, so hold on, I have a Q&A. Okay, so for those of us who are currently using a program that's not listed on this database, how else could we show the intervention we use our evidence base? So it doesn't have to be on the database for sure. What I would say is that if there is any literature backing up the intervention, that you would include that. So Riley, is there a specific intervention that you all are using already? Because we can look up some literature right now.
We're using a community-based model I was just looking at one of the things listed on the Strong Families website where we're grouping moms by their due date and having them go through kind of similar curriculum and support group. The example that we saw in there was more in a setting with an OBGYN, but we're using a similar model of the idea of community leads to better healthcare outcomes when they have people that are encouraging them to choose health. So I guess, would that be an adaptation of the one we've seen there, or is there something else that we could pull from?
So the first thing that comes to mind is like, yes, the research shows that community is community just produces better birthing outcomes for moms. And so I think that, let me gather my thoughts. I think that, yes, you can say that you adapted it, but I also think that there's a way to just say that it's novel. So you're doing a community, for me, it sounds more like parenting classes. You know how they do those prenatal parenting classes? I don't have any children, so I haven't gone through these things. So all I can tell you about parenting classes is what I've seen on TV. Even though I'm the oldest of 10 kids, all I can tell you about parenting classes is what I've seen on TV. And so it sounds like parenting classes. You're in community with other women who are, like you said, gathered by due date, and you all are just learning about like what you're gonna do. Do I have that right, Riley?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like more than just like, hey, we had your Lamaze class where you just learn how to do breathing during labor and delivery, but these are the people that you're going to also learn about nutrition during your pregnancy, and then knowing that they're all in similar places where there's a lack of social support outside of our organization, then they can learn how to start building that social support so that when our program ends, they have a for lack of a like not cliche term, a village around them.
Yeah. And have you all been using this model previously?
No, we're new doing it.
Okay. Yeah, because also I don't want you all to think like, oh, it has to be on this list, or oh, it has to be in the literature. If you've been using a model before and you have evaluation data on that model, and that evaluation data is good, that's still evidence-based practice. You already have evidence that the model works with the people that you serve, and that is just as valuable as someone else in another state who you don't know doing this work, having their like article published. It's just as valuable. The work that you've done in the past is just as good evidence, if not better, in my opinion, than some far off.
That's really helpful, because there's some other things we do that we've just done for 40 years and has worked really well. So we have our own evidence of 40 years of history, but this particular program asked about that one's new. So
yeah. And
cool.
even then, I think that yes, we're talking about evidence-based practice, but I think that it also would be okay to put forth and say, like, this is a new intervention that we're going to try based on the literature. So it's like, yeah, as soon as you said we are putting moms in community, I was like, yeah, because the literature says that it's making sure that pregnant moms or birthing people have community improves birthing outcomes. It decreases maternal mortality and premature births and things of that nature. And so if you're using that like research literature, those statistics to kind of build your own intervention, I think that that's just as I think that that's valuable as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Chrissy, I see your question is, what if we want to combine 2 to 3 evidence-based practices to get at our planned intervention? I think that is fine. You don't want to go above 3, but I think that is fine. You're just going to have to be really specific about what components you are taking from the different evidence-based practices and why, and why you feel like any of those interventions on their own is not enough to meet the needs of your community. Did that work, Christy? I know you were trying to unmute earlier. I don't know. Okay, I think they fixed the chat. Okay, so they did tell you that if you guys had any other questions, that you can email strongfamilies@utk.edu. Okay. Is there anything? Do I have anything else for? Am I kids? Okay, your chat feature should be available. That is what I'm seeing, and it does say to everyone. So I assume that it is now working for everyone. So are there any other questions I can answer about accessing these resources? Another thing I would encourage is I'm big on academic community partnerships. And so if you all have interns, especially from UTK, they have access to everything that we offer at UTK, especially our library. And so if you are looking, if you need to find literature on these interventions, like have your intern tap into the library resources and find that literature for you. I know that I know that a lot of nonprofit orgs and community orgs do not have access to academic journals. And so that can be hard to find research that is supporting your interventions. But if you have interns or if you work with faculty at Vanderbilt or UTK or Tennessee State, ask them to use their resources in order to give you access to some of the things that we have access to. Again, I'm just really big on making sure that we as academics are able to share our wealth and our knowledge with community orgs so that you all can benefit, because you're on the ground doing this work. So if there's anything that I can do, anything that I can pull up for you in the next 9 minutes or so, I'm more than happy to do that. Other than that, hold on, I'm lost again. Other than that, feel free to email me at fdubs@utk.edu. And again, we have 9 minutes left. So if there's any other questions that I can answer, I'm more than happy to do that.
This might be a little bit off topic, but in the grant solicitation, there's a question about evidence-based and there's a question of being trauma-informed. What would you say is the biggest difference between those two things? From my perspective, evidence-based most of the time is trauma-informed, but are there exceptions that I'm missing?
Yes. So those two things, they're not mutually exclusive. But trauma-informed is essentially like, is your intervention, have they considered trauma? Do they have special versions of the intervention, or was the intervention built with a trauma focus in mind? So that school-based intervention I was talking about earlier, like that's called TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy. So that is a trauma-focused, trauma-informed intervention that just so happens to be really evidence-based. It appears to be the gold standard. And so you want to be able to answer is, how does your intervention or your chosen intervention make space for people who may have experienced significant traumas?
We're also going to be holding a specific trauma-informed care workshop coming up, so check back for that as well for more information.
Are there any other questions I can answer?
Okay, if there's nobody else who has any other questions, we'll go ahead and close up. I want to thank everyone for participating today on behalf of UT Swarps. I want to thank Dr. Fusselware for this awesome presentation. I'm sure everybody gleaned a lot of great information. And I did put it in the chat box, but just to make sure, if you have any follow-up questions for the Strong Families team, you can email us, strongfamilies@utk.edu, and then we can give you a thought out answer to your question, or you can call our hotline. That number is 844-877-9677. So if you have any questions, you are free to contact us at either of those. And if there's no other questions, we can go ahead and close out. Thank you again, Dr. Fusselware. That was awesome.
Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.